Hey now, everybody. Welcome back. Brand new Take Aim podcast. Excited this week to have Curt Headington back on, my buddy from Xpedition Archery, and excited to talk with Curt about something I really don't have a lot of info about, but Curt kind of fills us all in if you've ever thought about getting a shed dog, a shed hunting dog. And we talk about shed hunting with the dog, how to train your dog, what to look for, all those options. Curt kind of lays out the good and the bad. So I really appreciate Curt and his time. As always, if you have not had the chance, make sure to check out Xpedition Bows. And, I shoot Xpedition, absolutely love the bow I shoot, and will continue to do so. It's one of the best bows I've ever shot in my life. And last year was probably the most fun I've had in many years, of just flat out shooting a bow and just practicing, getting those reps in. So make sure to check out Xpedition Archery. And as always, deer season never ends. We'll see you guys again next week. All right, guys, we are back. Brand new Take Aim podcast, and excited as always to get a new show out, and excited to talk about something I don't know a lot about, but excited to learn, and excited to have Curt Headington with me from Xpedition Archery. And Curt, man, what's happening? We're talking some sheds today, shed hunting.
Right on, B. Well, it's one of my favorite things. I appreciate the invite, and I'll share what I know. How's that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to talk about it. And, I know a little bit about shed hunting, and being in Michigan, we don't find a lot, I'll be honest, but I partake in the fun part in it. But I know, Curt, you'd probably say the same thing. It's probably winding down a little bit, probably winding down for you guys in Iowa as well.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously it's a pretty short season depending on the weather every year, and there's always a fine line on when do you start, and you don't want to pressure deer and they run off and heaven forbid they lose their antlers on the neighbors or whatever. But like through the years, I guess it's just kind of been an evolution for me, Brandon, because I'm 40 now, so rewind, 25 years ago, I was shed hunting when I was a kid, and it was long before shed hunting was cool or trendy. And I did it just because I was tore up with antlers. Like, I literally tore up with them, and I remember putting a backpack on and starting at my parents' place, and like, dude, I didn't come out of the woods until dark. And none of the neighbors cared. If anything, they all wanted me to shed hunt because, by and large, most of them were farmers or had farmers on, renting their tillable ground. They just wanted the horns picked up. They'd rather have me pick them up than them hit them with a tractor.
And a tire. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just evolved, So, I mean, back then I was never, targeting a specific animal, none of that. I just loved being in the woods. I loved walking. And it grew on me, and now it's almost to the point where now I shed hunt more so just to see, hey, I had these 3 bucks make, and I know they made it based on my cameras. I'm going to go pick them up, and by chance I shoot them next year. It's just cool to kind of have the story, right?
Right.
But yeah, tore up with it. I mean, I would, I'd tell you, man, I'd just soon shed hunt as hunt. I love shed hunting.
Yeah, it's neat. I can only imagine, kind of getting to the point where, you're going to find some, kind of like maybe on your property, Curt, like your certain bedding areas or certain parts of the property that you're like, hey, we're going to go in this section and find some. It's probably pretty exciting. And I think, probably exciting, like you talking about the memory of being a kid, the unknown, I think that is so cool of just what you might find. And that's one of the coolest things to me about shed hunting.
Yeah, and that's it, man. We joke. My wife, gives me a hard time every year because she's like, Curt, all this is like an adult Easter egg hunt. Like that's how she relates it to how excited I get about shed hunting. And it's the same reason I got into, having a dog trained for shed hunting and stuff. I mean, it's just like the next level of it. And like most things we do when you're into it, you just, you keep pouring your heart and soul into it and pushing further. So it's weird when I literally think back. I've sold, thousands of pounds of antlers through the year, and not necessarily for the money, just to get rid of them. Because at some point, if I had every one I've ever picked up, I would literally have a garage full of, little dinky, medium-sized 8-pointer stuff you don't really care about. It's just a shed antler. But the other cool side is, like, through the years, I've picked up some absolute hammers, and now those are almost like a piece of art in my house, and they all have a story. I remember, it's just like when you kill a deer, you can distinctly tell that story, 15 years later. You remember the day, you remember what the air smelled like. I mean, you're back in the moment.
Right.
As weird as that sounds, the shed thing is the same. Like big 90-inch shed, like that never leaves your mind on when you put your eyes on it the first time or whatever. So.
No, it doesn't. That is really cool. I wish I could say, Curt, I had a shoebox small enough to find all the sheds I've found.
Well,
I'm not kidding.
If you ever want to come to Iowa and go shed hunting, hit me up, dude, because typically I won't step foot in any of my stuff until like late-ish February. And now it's even – and that used to just be my general rule of thumb. And now with cell cameras and stuff, I'll let them run well into March for sure, just because I'm kind of keeping tabs on, am I seeing shed bucks? Is it time to go? Are they still packing? Right. And so, like, it has now got pushed back, I would say, until, basically early March I'll start looking. And then some of it's, what areas get pressured. I mean, like the trespassing things got completely out of hand with shed hunting. And it is what it is at this point. Like I said, now I do it more to find target bucks and kind of build that story or tell that story with the deer than just actually going out to find random sheds. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's set a date, man. Next year I'm coming out and we'll shed hunt a bunch,
I know you always try to make it down for the Iowa Deer Classic. I chuckle at that every year because almost every year they put the Classic on like the first weekend in March, and you'd make the argument that's probably the best time to be shed hunting. So I always struggle being at the show versus being in the woods, but it is what it is. They have a big shed contest there that's, golly, I'd have to say it's probably second to nowhere in the country as far as the entries that you get to look at. And I don't know, I just, like I said, man, I'm tore up with sheds. I love them.
All right, guys, we're back. Sorry about that. We lost my Wi-Fi connection for 1 second, but somewhere there, Curt, I said that I'll have to come out and shed hunt with you, and I lost you, so let's pick up from there.
Yeah, man, all I would say to that is you have an open invite, and like I said, typically it's about the same time as the Iowa Deer Classic, so you want to come in early or stay late, whatever you want to do, brother.
Yeah, that would be a good time for sure, so... I wanted to touch on real quick, Curt, like you went back to the cameras. Have you noticed, let's say since you started really using the cameras for that manner, what you did before and what you're doing now, how far a difference of a range is that? Have you noticed year to year that you've pushed that back like several weeks, or does it go kind of year to year just based off what you're seeing on the cameras?
Well, the interesting thing is, like, it used to be I always used Valentine's Day or February 14th as kind of my, hey, let's get started shed hunting, right? And in reality, that was early. So when I think back now, I probably may have been doing just as much damage as good, tramping around on the farms or whatever, but my mindset was different back then, too. Like, I was just out shed hunting. I wasn't... it was the big boy Easter egg hunt, and I was hoping just to find a big deer, right? And even before cell cameras, I mean, I've always had cameras running on my plots, but of course you got to go there to check the camera to know what's still packing. So in either case, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, if anything, using cameras more as a trigger on when I start shed hunting, it's probably pushed it back for sure. A couple weeks. I would now argue don't even start until late February or early March because there's still a lot of deer packing in late February. At least on most years, there's a lot of deer packing in February.
It seems to be. Yep. Obviously, that changes a lot with the winter and how healthy the deer herd is. But I think overall that's like a perfect rule of thumb. Like you're saying. So you don't want to pressure the deer and just timing-wise seems to be a lot better. So, I know
it's not so competitive now, Brandon. Like, I mean, I don't really worry about any of my farms, but at the same time, I mean, trespassing has become a major issue with shed hunting, and I've never, for the love of God, I can't figure out why people trespass to shed hunt because hypothetically they're picking up antlers from deer they're never going to get to hunt. But
right. I don't get that either.
Well, I say it every time or every year. I say big antlers make people do dumb things, but
that's right.
It is what it is, man. I would say March-ish, the first part of March is typically prime to start. So
yeah, for sure. So, one thing that I have no experience in, Curt, and I know you do, is using a dog to shed hunt. So if you were to compare the two, Curt, before we kind of talk tips and techniques with using a dog, but would you say that has really increased the amount of sheds over the years you found because of using a dog?
I'm torn on that, Brandon. I mean, and here's why I say this. You can read article after article after article about, different people's opinions on shed dogs and whatnot. And I don't know. I've changed how I shed hunt. I mean, the enjoyment I get from having a dog shed hunt with me is no different than having a dog, bird hunt with you. You can go out and walk around in native grass and shoot pheasants without a dog. You bring a dog, your odds go up, right? So
right.
I think shed hunting is the same exact way, and I do question it. I mean, my dog will come back over the hill with a shed, and what you never will know is what have I found that without my dog, right?
Right, yeah.
And that's why, some guys are like, oh, my dog's finding 3 to my 1, and I'm like, maybe that's true, but maybe it's not, because what have you found them anyway? Right. And no one can answer that, right? It's like the, tree falls and no one's there to hear it. Does it make sound? Well, you think it does, but you know what I mean? It's like,
we don't know. Yeah.
Right. But so I guess I won't say definitively, hey, since I've, had shed dogs, I pick up way more sheds. To me, it's really not about that. It's the fact that now I have me covering ground and I feel like I'm a pretty good shed hunter. Don't miss a bunch. But damn sure that element of your dog being able to smell them, and I've seen it time and time and time again, they will find sheds you won't find.
I was just going to ask that. How many did you think, or do you think, or know of, Curt, that they have absolutely found that you never would have? That's
right. So
happen.
that's kind of it's kind of that trick question, right? Because same thing, outside of me physically seeing a shed and then not doing anything other than just watching my dog and see, how he finds it, right? And the reality is, sheds don't inherently have a lot of scent. And I'd kind of argue with anyone, no matter what, I'd say my dog has to get within, depending on the day and the conditions and the humidity, and all the factors, same thing, you would talk about with a bird dog. I would say they have to be somewhere, if it's just purely on scent and they're not seeing it and smelling it at the same time, I'll bet the dog still has to be within 10 to 12 foot of that shed to pick up the scent. And the reason I know this, Brandon, I don't know how many times, I see a shed off in the distance and I just let my dog work to it. I'm going to let him find it no matter what, right?
Right.
And he has to obviously be downwind, but I've seen him cruise by one at, if I said 20 yards, and I'm like, I can't believe he's not hitting it. But then I've seen him lock up there's a pheasant there, and almost cut on a dime at 10, 12 feet from the thing. And I'm like, he 100% smelled that shed. He didn't see it, he smelt it. So I think I don't know how many of those. Like I said, the example when I said he came over the hill with a shed, did he smell that one or did he see it? Because I know definitively, if there's a hay field or a bean field and there's a big 5-point side laying out there at 100 yards, if he sees it, he just lines out, picks it up, brings it to me.
Right.
So I don't have a perfect way to answer that question, but a well-trained shed dog is using both his eyes and his nose. And then I think it's just more on how they range, because it's a little different, as you can imagine. I bird hunt my dog, and I want him nice and close to me. But when we go shed hunting, honestly, I don't care if I see him until he comes back with a shed antler.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. If you're into dogs, if you're into hunting sheds, it's a pretty cool deal. I get as much enjoyment out of shed hunting with my dog as I do pheasant hunting with my dog. But I don't know if it's made me a substantially better shed hunter. I think it's just That
something extra.
Insurance.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah,
you got
for
it.
sure. So let's say, Curt, we're going to shed hunt with the dog today. But obviously you've already trained this dog, and you can add in some of that. But how do you start the day with the dog? You know, you're going to cover a section. Let's say you figure out where you want to go. Are you just using the wind on a perfect, like, north to south? I'm just using that as an example. Or do you want it more of a angled type of wind, and you and the dog are walking into it? Which way does kind of that dog like to work better?
You know, the way most dogs work, I mean, as they get older, they're going to use the wind to their advantage regardless, right? So even if the wind's at my back, Brandon, and don't get me wrong, I do put some thought into, you know, if I'm on a ridge and I can put the wind in my face, I do it just to give the dog a leg up. But the reality is, even when it's plumb wrong and the wind's at my back and I'm going to walk through a bedding area, my dog inherently will work out ahead of me, and then he works back into the wind. You know, same thing when we're pheasant hunting, he does it. So I do give it some thought just to try to give him every advantage possible. But I think once the dog knows what he's doing, and like in my case, I have labs. You know, their goal in life is to please me as the owner, and they know them bringing me a shed pleases me. So, like, dude, they go hard. Like, he goes, Cash is the dog's name. I mean, he goes hard. He is there to find a shed, and he goes hard until he finds one. And the second it's in my hand, he goes hard again to find the next one. So I don't know that I change how I shed hunt personally much with my dog, other than, like I said, giving it a little thought on, hey, the wind's right, let me start on this end instead of that end. And that's about it. Other than that, I turn him loose, and I shed hunt like I always would.
Gotcha. So with that being said, Curt, I know you said they almost don't have a lot of scent on them. I assume they have a little more scent, obviously, you know, if the antlers just fell off. But with that being said, so how do you go into training a dog to shed hunt when they're using their nose and the antlers don't carry a lot of odor? So how do you overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, so a couple things, because I cannot take all the credit for training my shed dog. I did work with Tom Dockin and Mike Wieben, his head trainer up at Dawkins Oak Ridge Kennels, and that's an incredible place. If somebody's listening and wants a shed dog, they don't actually breed puppies, but they arrange the breedings, and then, you know, they place it with an owner, and with that, if you want to take your dog through some training, they do it, and I was blown away, impressed with these guys. So I guess I'm going to even take a step back, Brandon. I think you can get lucky and randomly get a dog that has that hunt drive or the retrieve drive, but like now having done it and now having multiple dogs, I think it is important that you're starting with a dog with the strong pedigree. And I don't mean to say, hey, he's AKC or UKC registered. That almost is a given. But above and beyond that, you actually got to look at their pedigree and realize, wow, he comes from a lineage of dogs that were incredibly trainable. They might not have been the best hunting dog. We don't know that, right? But like any dog that reaches like master hunter credentials, that's incredible amounts of training that dog's went through. And you almost have to assume the drive's going to be inherent to the dog's DNA, right? So that's very granular, but like in working with a trainer or something like that understands the principles of field trialing your dog and, getting those credentials on their pedigree, it takes a lot, and not every dog can do it. So I would argue if you're going to be serious about trying to train a shed dog, start with a dog that genetically should be programmed to hunt, period. Because I hate to say it, but I think a lot of dogs, are more designer dogs. Like they have been bred for the look and you talk about like Silverlight and any anomaly of the breed. They weren't bred based on performance. They were bred to get a specific look, and so be it. I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but it is what it is. And I'm telling you, there's a distinct difference. At least I've seen a very distinct difference paying attention to that. And by default, you end up paying more for your dog, but I think you end up with more dogs. So back to the training piece. I think I've been blessed to have some good dogs. I mean, I think Cash, my 6-year-old, is is an exceptional specimen. Like, I think he could excel at anything you put in front of him because he's so trainable. But from day one, Dawkins had me go through a regimen of it's like a pressure on, pressure off thing. And I'm like, literally, I picked this puppy up at 7 weeks old or 8 weeks old, whenever you pick him up. And every day it's little things, right? Like, you're holding the dog, you're holding him belly up, so he's on his back and he has to be 100% submissive to you. And if he does, fight it, you just slightly push on his chest. When he calms down, you let up, right? And It starts to program their mind, number one, that you're the boss, and number two, when they do something you don't want them to do, they're going to feel some pressure, right?
Right.
And I'm telling you, it literally starts from there. And then the next thing is you got to have obedience hardwired into your dog, because without that, they're just going to run and do their thing. They're going to be a dog, right? They're not going to be a working dog. So like the progression's just that. And like at 10 weeks old, these dogs are retrieving, so like I'll be in a hallway with a shed antler, and the only time I let my dogs, like, I don't let my dogs just chew on shed antlers as a toy. When I have a little tiny shed antler out for my puppies when I'm training them, I do it in a hallway, right? So I push the shed down, give them the command, find the bone. They go down, they pick it up, but they can't run away with it. They have to pick it up, and when they bring it to me, I pet them up good. It's a lot of praise, and I'll only do this 3 to 5 times every morning. Every morning we do it, and then they get fed. And I'm telling you, all you're doing is conditioning their brain, right? Like, I please Dad, I get fed. Right. And eventually it moves into, I do well, and the praise is all they're looking for. The pat on the head, the, good dog thing. And I think the other thing is, I don't hardwire the retrieving thing. Like, I'll let him chew and play on that bone when he brings it back to me, and it's just praise, because I do want him comfortable keeping it in his mouth as well, right?
Right.
Or holding it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, dude, that's where it starts. And then, like I said, I've used Dawkins. Actually, I got another dog. I got a new puppy that'll be going up there at 6 months old. But I think the biggest part is people expect too much out of a dog, and dogs are fairly simple in how they think, so we have to think like that, because they're all they need is repeat. Repetition and consistency will get your dog where he needs to be, because there's no such thing as a bad dog. There's just bad dog owners. If you don't train your dog, you can't expect him to, like, read your mind. And I think as you train him, it becomes weird, because I swear I can have a conversation with Cash, and it's like he knows exactly what I want him to do. So anyway, sorry, I'm kind of veering all over the place, but the reality is that bond from 8 weeks old to 6 months old, I think, is the most important thing. And like my new dog Tango, he's literally in my office right now with me. He's 14 weeks old right now. He won't have a day in his life from now until he goes to his first round of training up at Dawkins, where every day we don't do our little routine, and every day, I hold him on his back. We do that exercise. I'm playing with his toes. I'm putting my hands in his mouth. I want him conditioned to all of that stuff to socializing. The retrieving and the hunting part, like, inherent to their DNA. So you got to get the obedience and the bond established when they're young, because I'm telling you, everything else will come a lot easier once that's established.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And you have to start that at a young age. Yeah. Just like you said, start that at a young age. And, to go back to what you said, Curt, in kind of the beginning of that, made total sense as kind of, identify those dogs that come from a hunting kind of background or a hunting pedigree. And, that makes all the sense in the world, because to them, even though it's a shed and it's not like retrieving a duck or a goose, they're still hunting something. They're still getting that, like you said, that reward at the end when he brings it back to Dad. He's getting that biscuit or that shot of water in the mouth, good boy, the pat on the back. So I think that is key.
That is key. And the thing is, I mean, if you really just think about, getting a dog to shed hunt, sheds are boring, man. They're cold, they're hard, they don't smell much, and they don't move. So like to get a dog that wants to do that, it comes through that repetition. They realize when that happens, it's a good situation for them. Dad is really happy, and boy, he pets me up good, or I get a treat. And that was actually going to be kind of the next part. I mean, like, I go from that little regimen. My dog will go up to Dawkins, and they'll do some farm training. They're working on, heel into your side. They're working on a place command where you could put your dog, say on a rug or in a duck blind, and they're on a place command, which means you do not move. No matter what happens, you do not come off that thing. And like Cash, my 6-year-old, I mean, honestly, I think I could place him on a rug, and that dog would not move. I mean, outside of him, peeing or pooping, I don't know that he'd even get off the thing to do that. Like, it's so ingrained in him to stay there. It's obedience. And that's why I'm saying if you got a good hunting dog and you want him to pick sheds up, I think it just comes through repetition. And, like, it starts when they're teeny, just on retrieving one, and that's what they learn. Like, hey, when I get to retrieve, it's a shed, and then you progress, right? Like, fast forward to 6 months old or whatever, now it's like hide and seek. So I'll go out and put 4, 5, 6 shed antlers around my yard, and then we're just taking a walk, and I'm watching him, and it's crazy because they will instinctively see one or smell one, pick it up, and they want to bring it to me because that's all they know. Hey, when I see that, if I bring it to Dad, I get praise. And so begins the story. I mean, and the scent thing, you can overcome that. There are some, man-made or, synthetic scents. I personally use one from Dawkins that's called Rack Wax. And when they're little, 6, 8 months old, I lather that thing like you wouldn't believe. I want him to be able to hit that scent cone from 20 yards away. And then as he gets better at the hide-and-seek game, I just keep minimizing it and minimizing it and minimizing it. But I never train without it. So I always want, in training, I always want that shed to smell more than it's potentially going to in the wild. And it's worked for me. It's worked for the dogs I've worked with. I don't know that there's a perfect science to it. Because, I mean, some people would be like, hey, you got to be placing these things in water and letting them sit overnight and then wearing rubber gloves to put them out. And
wow.
I don't know if all of that's necessary, Brandon, because I've never went to that level. But, I mean, I do get the concept of if my scent is on the shed, that's definitely not going to be the same as a natural shed laying there. So
sure.
That's why I use so much rack wax, because I think it mimics what they're mimicking with that scent, Brandon, is the actual wax ring that's around the pedicle of that shed. So, like, you pick up a freshie, obviously sometimes the pedicle even still has, like, blood or remnants of blood, but then outside of that where it actually connects to the deer, there's a very light layer, and it's a wax layer. That truly is what has the scent that they're mimicking with like the rack wax. And I'm telling you, it works. That rack wax is obviously so close to that scent. Now I've watched Cass pick up a yearling spike antler on scent because it's dang sure not big enough for him to visually see it. Like laying in grass or what.
Right.
So a lot of repetition, Brandon. A lot of repetition to get him.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it. It's like anything. It's work and training and getting to that point. Would you say, Curt? I know you use labs, but have you heard of other breeds that you would be potentially, like interested in, or that other people have had good success with?
Yeah, I mean, and we do some competition stuff. I mean, there's a couple organizations like NASDA, the North American Shed Hunting Dog Association. That's one we've competed in the most, but like the UKC has one called the Elite Shed Dog Series. All of those events, and this is going to lead me back to the answer, all of those events are courses with planted sheds, and you're basically running against yourself because it's a time thing, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you're running against every dog that's there. It's like you're doing it individually to title your dog, but in the same breath, like if you have any competitive juice, which I might have a touch of that, Brandon, every time we go, I'm there to win it. I want my dog to be the fastest dog. And I would say, from my experience, 90% plus of these guys, competing in these shed contests are running labs. But I've seen German short hair pointers. I've seen, different versions of wire hair pointers, whether they're a Griffin or a Drothauer. Golden retrievers. I got a buddy with a golden retriever that's an excellent shed dog. I think realistically, almost any of the bird dogs by default could be a shed dog. I think labs are the most prevalent because I truly believe labs have the strongest retrieve in them, right? Like there's a reason they're a Labrador retriever. They might not have the best nose, but 100% you'll blow your shoulder out before that dog, wants to quit bringing you something back, just that retrieve instinct. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's limited to labs by any matter. I think labs are probably the most natural dog to use in that environment just because they want to retrieve.
Sure. So, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I would assume any bird dog would do really well, but I think you're right with the labs. It seems now that I think about it, Curt, it seems like every time I've seen anybody use a dog for it, it's actually been a lab. So there's got to be something to that.
I would just argue, I mean, I think it almost by default, because most guys that are doing the shed dog, they're using a lab. So almost by default, they're the ones that, seem to be at the top of the podium or winning the world championships and stuff. But I wouldn't say it's limited to it. I think if you got a good trainable dog, I'm kind of with you on the fact that, like, the crossover with a bird dog's a no-brainer. But in the same breath, like, I've seen, I've hunted behind plenty of pointers that will find and point a bird, but they almost don't even care about the retrieve. And I think labs are the opposite. I think when they're bird hunting and they find a bird, the only reason they want to flush that bird is because they know they're going to get to retrieve it. It's less about finding it, more about the retrieve with a lab. I think, like the pointing breeds, it's more about finding it and less about the retrieve. And that's why people like force break dogs to retrieve, because they have to. Like, they don't inherently want to. They make them, right? They train them to do it. So this is probably, and I don't want to say an argument or a debate, but, like, certainly if you ask a guy that's big into GSPs, I guarantee the right trainer would make their dog pick sheds up just as efficiently as any lab. But, again, all boils down to what's the dog been exposed to, what's his mission in life, and ultimately, probably any breed could do it. But it's an opinion thing. It's why I'm a lab guy. So yeah, for sure. So naturally, Curt, I mean, that would be the first thing if you were to give somebody a tip, it would be to maybe look at a lab. I mean, that's coming from you, but you're saying also to look at that pedigree and those papers of those dogs, correct? I think it's if I had to say probably the most important thing, I think you have to start with a good dog or you're just going to be frustrated. And not that there's any guarantees, right? But, like, I look at the lineage of both my dogs, and their backgrounds are amazing. Their great-grandpa was a master hunter. Their uncle's a field champion. Like, right down the list, every one of them, I mean, it's like, I joke about it, but I'm like, it's like the Aryan race of dogs. They have bred them for one specific thing, and it's competition. And that's why I always, people are like, holy cow, your dog's crazy. And I'm like, he's got crazy drive, but he's incredibly obedient. I tell him to heel. Right. He's literally at my side waiting. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you can train any dog, but you can't train drive. They either have it inherently or they don't. So I want that crazy lab that can run all day long, but boy, when I tell them to come or heel or place, I want them to listen too. And that's what I think you get through training, but I think it's what you get through training the right dog. You got to have a dog with a drive like that. And that's for sure inherent to the dog. It has nothing to do with training. Yeah. No, I got you. Yeah, 100%. So your youngest dog now is getting ready to go. Is that what you said earlier? Yeah, so we picked, we had a chocolate lab that would have been 12 years old this summer. He went down on us here, golly, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and a good buddy of mine that I've ran a lot of competition hunts with, He has an incredible female that he had bred to a champion dog down in Arkansas, and we were lucky enough to secure one of those puppies. So I got a male out of that litter. He comes with incredible credentials as far as his pedigree, and now we're in the puppy stage. So he's already progressing nice. We picked him up at 8 weeks old. He was retrieving well at 10 weeks old. I mean, he's doing the sit. You know, he comes. He's figuring it out. And I think a lot of it helps because I have Cash, my 6-year-old, and like I said, he's an incredible dog. So little Tango gets to see that every day, that he's exposed to that every day. And whether he's actually coming on command or he's following Cash back because they're both coming, I really don't care. Like, the commands are going to go both ways, and he's going to keep hearing them forever. But I'm pretty excited because, I mean, even next spring, you know, he'll be a little over a year old and trained. And, of course, Cash by then will be 7, and he's already amazing. So, like, I'm very anxious to have 2 working shed dogs to see how much that changes it, too. In my mind, I'm just covering that much more ground, or thoroughly covering more ground is probably how I should say it.
Yeah. I'm sure that that's going to be pretty neat. I would assume Tango, just by, you know, even coincidence, just by hanging out with him, is going to just, you know, naturally kind of pick up and inherit some of those things Cash does, and I think that would be really neat to see.
Yeah, I think the key to it, of course, is I won't have him, like, I'll do all of Tango's training, you know, post-Dawkins, I'll do all of Tango's training individual to Tango, right? Like, Cash won't even be in the equation because I don't want Cash to beat Tango at the game. I want Tango to realize that, gosh, I can do this and I'm good at this, with the goal that, you know, eventually they will compete. You know, it's no different than putting 2 bird dogs in the field. The goal is that they're not worried about the other dog. They're worried about, you know, getting to the bird first, or retrieving the bird first, or whatever. And I think that'll come inherently. But it'll be fun to see how Tango does progress through training, because, I mean, I very vividly remember different days with Cash where I'm like, wow, you know, he totally gets it. Like, you know, he wants to do this. He's going hard. And like I said, in my opinion, it starts at 8 weeks. That phase from 8 weeks or 2 months to 6 months is the most important time in that dog's life. Like, that's where you have to get that foundation put in them, because from there, boy, you can just train them up to do amazing things. Yeah,
I'm sure. I bet you it's super neat. You know, it's nice to have that, you know, dog-pet relationship, but it's kind of extra, you know, when you're doing something like that. Or I would assume it's the same kind of relationship, you know, a duck hunter has with his dog. But, you know, I assume the dogs as well, Curt, kind of like your little jog or ride over to the farm, you know, kind of get the drift of what's going on, and they get excited, and all of that's probably just super neat to watch.
They 100% know when we're going hunting. Like, and it's different commands, so I use different commands with Cash when we're shed hunting versus when we're bird hunting. But I'm telling you, I think he's even connected the fact, if I put my orange on, you know, if I'm holding a gun, he knows we're bird hunting. Like, I wouldn't even have to tell him.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You know, if I'm putting my you know, my gaiters on to go tramping through the snow and stuff, but I don't have orange on, and his collar goes on him, it's like a switch kind of goes off in their mind. And I'm telling you, that conditioning is just through repetition, right? And they figure it out. So having a shed dog's super cool. And I think, Brandon, you just said it, like, you know, everybody's got a story that duck hunts or pheasant hunts. Everybody's had that special dog. I think the key is, you know, how many of those special dogs can you have, you know, during your active hunting career? Because, boy, to me, it's probably the coolest thing outside of having kids or whatever, and that bond. Having a good working dog's as cool as it gets.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and, you know, I mean, that's one of the reasons I thought this would be such a cool show, is it's a whole world to a lot of people that aren't exposed to having a shed dog, or even ever thought of, you know, potentially shed hunting this way. But a lot of it, you know, I just thought was neat that I knew you would be able to express really well just the kinship between, you know, a dog and his owner, and doing it the right way. So, you know, I'm glad you talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah, and then that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to paint a picture to anyone that you train a shed dog and, oh my gosh, you're going to find sheds more than you've ever found. Maybe it will happen that way, but like the reality is shed season's short. And if like you said it, Brandon, you started the podcast saying, yeah, man, like we don't pick many up in Michigan, so you could have the best shed dog in the world, but dude, if you're on a 200-acre farm and there's no sheds there, he's not going to find one either.
Yeah, it's not going to help.
So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It is what it is, but I mean, I got buddies that travel into Canada and stuff to hunt their dogs, and it's less about the antlers and more about the fact that they're hunting their dog, right?
Right.
But you got to give your dog opportunities to pick sheds up. So who cares? Maybe it's you always planting them. That's still cool for your dog. It's going to be cool for you as a dog owner to watch your dog, achieve and do great things. But it is neat, boy. I'll tell you, if anyone listening does train a dog or have a dog trained, the first time your dog brings you a wild shed, like I said, I always use he comes over the hill with a shed in his mouth. I mean, boy, you'll be be the happiest guy. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that, Curt. If somebody was to, again, say, this is something I want to do, Curt, do you have a spot they should go to maybe start to look for a dog? I mean, do you have any advice for that?
Generically speaking, I would say what they need to do is they need to look at training kennels, not necessarily breeders. And I only say that, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but like there are people in the dog breeding business that, for all practical purposes, use it like a factory, right? They're breeding dogs and they're selling dogs, and that is their business. Dawkins, like my trainer that I use, they don't breed dogs. They don't whelp puppies. They arrange it, and they're arranging litters with incredible dogs with the thought that these dogs are going to become working dogs. And whether that's a duck dog, a pheasant dog, a shed dog, they're trying to start with that next level of intelligence and trainability in that dog. I would tell anyone, I mean, they could go out to the NASDA site, again, North American Shed Hunting Dog Association. They'd find good information there. They'd find great information at the UKC Elite Shed Dogs. All of this stuff, and there's a bazillion forums out on Facebook and Instagram and social media in general. This, like most things in hunting, there is a community of people that are very like-minded. They're all doing it. And you could very easily get to the right people. I mean, there's lots of good trainers, and that's why I'm saying I personally like Dawkins, but like every state, every county, somebody's got a good dog trainer. It's just a matter of connecting the two. So I guess what I'd recommend, if you're serious about it, be serious about finding the right dog first, and then be serious about potentially working with the right trainer. Or if you're going to do all the training, dang sure give yourself the leg up by starting with a dog that inherently should be able to do it. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense for sure. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That makes a ton of sense, and I think you'd be so much further ahead. And that's kind of spot on about the breeders. There's that's a whole different world for sure. I don't even want to get into all that.
And that's why I don't want anyone to take offense to that. But I mean, a lot of labs are bred and they're advertised as registered labs, and it's like, hey, that's good. It's a purebred dog. It doesn't mean it's going to be a good dog. You really got to dive in and understand that pedigree and what an FC stands for, or an AFC or MH. Like all those abbreviations on that pedigree mean something.
Sure.
And it's worth understanding that, or work with someone that understands that to even start with a good dog.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we go, Curt, I know we got just a few minutes left, but I'd be remiss if I don't ask what's happening over at Xpedition, and how are you guys doing cranking out the bows?
Yeah, so it's been a crazy year. The X Series launch obviously created a ton of hype, and it's carried over or translated back into sales. I don't even have the number, Brandon, but we've added well over 100 dealers this year since we launched. So we're at full crank. Anyone that's listening, please be patient. We are diligently trying to get bows out. And the reality is, I mean, we can't build them fast enough, Brandon, and we're doing the best we can. But yeah, good times at Xpedition. It's frustrating because I know dealers are anxious to get more bows, and obviously they can't sell a bow to an end consumer if they don't have one. So we're pushing hard. I got all my guys, hitting it as hard as they possibly can, but we also don't want to skimp on the quality side. So it's hang tight if you haven't got your bow. I know there's a lot of bows ordered and people waiting. So it's exciting. It's fun to see the brand, exploding, but being the guy that runs the plant, it's every day I scratch my head and think, wow, how do we
like what are we doing today? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Nope, I definitely hear that. But yeah, I mean, it's good to have those kind of growing pains, and excited that you guys are growing at that rate, and I'll just be excited as long as I can have a bow before October. I'm not mad at you guys, Curt.
That commitment I can make to you, Brandon. I promise you we'll have you long before hunting season. Yes.
Well, good deal, man. Well, thanks for your time today, Curt, man. I appreciate it. And if you guys don't know, make sure to check out Xpedition Archery. And, Curt, let everybody know where they can find you guys.
Yep, kind of the same thing. I mean, we're all over social media. It's Xpedition without an E, so XP. And then, of course, XpeditionArchery.com is our website. So check us out. Like I said, I mean, we used to be way more scattered with, dealers in different geographic areas and whatnot. That's changing rapidly. We got a lot of new dealers coming on literally every week. So if you didn't have a dealer close to you, the goal is that you will soon, or maybe you already do and you didn't even know they picked us up. So in either case, check it out. There is a dealer locator on the website as well if you're not sure. We do try to keep that updated week to week. As we add dealers, we add it to the dealer locator. So,
absolutely. For sure. And, I'm sure Curt will catch up before hunting season again on the podcast. And, as you guys and girls know, you can find us right here every week, Outdoor Podcast Channel, iTunes. And as always, deer season never ends. And thanks again, Curt.
Thank you, Brandon.